Leo, that bad boy Ryder is about to steal your girl. I sprinted over, only to see Chloe Miller land a clean punch that practically knocked Ryder Vance into next week. Her sharp eyes found me. "What are you doing here?" she asked. Out loud, I said, "Just worried you might have hurt your hand, slugger." Inside, though, I was ecstatic. My girl, the heroine of my own personal story, was just so damn cool. It had all started a few minutes earlier. "Leo, you better get over here. Ryder Vance just called Chloe out to the woods behind the bleachers. Some kid from the next class over yelled at me while I was trying to focus on my pre-calc homework. The nerve of that guy, in broad daylight, pulling a stunt like this." I shot up from my desk, channeling my inner drama queen. Ignoring the stares of my classmates, I bolted out of the room like a miniature tornado. I marched toward the woods like I owned the place, my righteous anger fueling every step. By the time I got there, my dear Chloe and the school's resident bad boy, Ryder, were already at the climax of their little drama, the part with the tough guy threats. Ryder was puffing out his chest, telling Chloe she was going to be his girl. A fury I didn't know I had boiled up inside me, and I was about to charge in for a heroic rescue when I saw it happen. Chloe grabbed Ryder's shoulder with one hand and slammed her other fist squarely into his gut. I swear I saw a spit fly. At 5'7", with a lean, athletic build and a no-nonsense ponytail, Chloe looked absolutely magnificent in the afternoon sun. I couldn't tear my eyes away. She looked down at Ryder, who was now crumpled on the ground, her expression one of pure disgust. "Watch your mouth. I'm not your girl. Say that again, and I'll give you a matching bruise for every time you do. Chloe Miller, I'll remember this. Next time I won't let you get away with it." The so-called bad boy, dazed by the punch and stunned by the complete reversal of his expectations, spat out what he probably thought was a cool parting shot, then clutched his stomach and ran off. I couldn't help but laugh. If you didn't know any better, you'd think she was the tough one around here. The moment her gaze fell on me, I immediately dropped the tough guy act and morphed back into my usual role, her sweet, harmless buddy. "Leo, what are you doing here?" Chloe asked, tilting her head. I walked right up behind her and started expertly kneading her shoulders. "I was worried about you," I said smoothly. "Figured you might be tired after all that exertion." I then lifted the fist she'd used to punch him, my eyelashes fluttering as I looked down at it with a tender, heartbroken expression. "Look at this. You probably scraped a knuckle." A blush crept up Chloe's face. She yanked her hand back, goosebumps popping up on her arm. "Leo, be normal for 1 second. All right, I said, putting on my best kick puppy face. But inside, I was celebrating. I'd been dragging Chloe to self-defense classes with my retired Special Forces uncle for years. Did anyone really think some high school wannabe gangster was going to intimidate her? If he had, all my groundwork would have been for nothing. I was 8 when I met Chloe Miller. My parents were both professors at the local university, and we lived in the faculty housing complex. Chloe's parents were professors too, and they just moved in. One minute they were unpacking boxes, and the next she was being cornered by Billy, the chubby kid from down the street, and his crew. I'd never gotten along with Billy. I could handle his usual nonsense, but I couldn't stand a bully. I marched over, gave him a shove that sent him sprawling on his but grabbed the new girl's hand, and we ran like the wind. When we finally stopped in a spot I deemed safe, I turned to look at her. Wow, she had these 2 perfect dark braids, skin as smooth as porcelain, and big eyes that blinked up at me. In that moment, I felt my heart do a little flip like a couple of tiny angels were playing trumpets right next to my ears. I figured this must be what the grown-ups called love at first sight. I followed Chloe home like a happy little puppy. Her house was still a mess of boxes. When her mom heard I protected her daughter, she praised me to the high heavens. When she learned my name was Leo, she smiled, took both our hands, and said something I never forget. "Leo and Chloe, you two were just meant to be friends." From that day on, our families became close, and I learned that Chloe was a lot tougher than she looked. She told me later that if I hadn't shown up, she wouldn't have just stood there. Her house was close enough that if she'd yelled, her parents would have heard her. Hearing that just made my heart beat faster. What a smart girl. I had good taste. Once I understood what being childhood sweethearts really meant, I declared to Chloe, "One day when I'm rich, I'm going to buy a white horse, put on a fancy suit, and come back to marry." Unfortunately, before I could get the "you" out, Chloe cut me off. "To go on a quest, you mean? Like Frodo? You want to face down orcs and giant spiders to get the ring to Mordor?" I knew she'd been obsessed with the Lord of the Rings movies, which were always on TV. Her head was full of hobbits and elves. There was no room for a regular kid like me. She even started humming the movie's theme song, "The Fellowship Breaks, a Long and Perilous Road." So typical. I was fuming, convinced she was as dense as a block of wood. But then I saw her bright, sunny smile, and all my frustration just melted away. I dragged my little stool over and plopped down next to her to watch the rest of the movie. We're still young, I told myself. There's plenty of time. Plenty of time for what, you idiot? My cousin, Lily Carter, whacked me on the head. You're so dumb. Lily was an expert on all things romance, devouring YA novels and binge-watching every drama on Netflix. I considered her my personal guru, and I frequently shared the dramatic sagas of my young heart with her. If you like her, you have to tell her. You have to say the words out loud. This whole secretly protecting her from afar while waiting for her to magically figure it out thing, that's how you lose the girl. Your childhood sweetheart situation is the most dangerous trope of all. She lectured me like a tenured professor of love, her throat getting dry. I nodded frantically, scrawling notes in my notebook like a madman, while also remembering to offer her a vanilla ice cream bar as tribute. She seemed pleased with my respectfulness, but then she glanced at my notebook, which was filled with my messy, phonetic scrawls. She sighed. Look, Chloe Miller, that's a total main character name. We Carters. Our last name just doesn't have that same ring to it. So if you're going to win this, you need a unique strategy. I bristled at that. I like my name. What are you talking about, Lily? Carter is a great name. You don't get it, Leo. In all those hit romance novels, the guy's name is always something like Sterling or Grayson or Vance. Carter is what you get in a slice-of-life family drama. Now listen up, kid. How about the secret playbook? You want it or not? I knew she'd recently gotten a Kindle Unlimited subscription and was mainlining cheesy romance novels. As she held up her phone, showing me a cover with a ridiculously airbrushed couple on it, I swallowed hard. For the sake of my future, I had to do this. Who would have thought that a kid who could barely read would have his first serious literary education come from the YA romance section? Armed with this new knowledge, I decided to steal the bad boy's playbook and leave him with nothing. I started by bringing Chloe a flower every day. Unfortunately, my grand romantic gesture was shut down before it even began, because the flowers I was picking were from her own family's flower bed. After a week, I'd plucked a bald patch right into their front yard. Chloe stood over the barren patch of dirt, her face a mask of disapproval, giving me the most withering silent judgment I'd ever received. In the end, under her supervision, I had to use my allowance and a small loan from her to buy new seeds. Then I had to replant the entire patch myself, promising to water it every day. When one road to romance is blocked, you find another. My next plan money, my allowance wasn't huge, and it had just taken a serious hit, but I wasn't giving up. For every dollar I had, Chloe would have $1.50. Standing in front of the convenience store by the school, I tried to act nonchalant as I pulled out the meager cash I'd scraped together. I announced I was treating her to a bag of flamin' hot Cheetos and some Doritos. Chloe gave my crumpled bills a pitying look, then pulled a crisp $10 bill from her own pocket. It's on me, she said. In that moment, she seemed to grow 10 feet tall in my eyes. When I opened my bag of Doritos and found a limited edition collectible game card inside, I almost fell to my knees and swore fealty to her. I reported back to my guru. Lily ruffled my hair, her expression a mixture of pity and exhaustion. Buddy, it looks like you just weren't born to be the brooding billionaire type. Don't force it. You should probably just focus on your grades and try a different strategy. A light bulb went off in my head. We were students. Our main job was to study. I would drag Chloe into an academic arms race with me. I would bury her in so many practice tests that all those other romantic distractions would simply wither and die. From that day on, we did our homework together. I'd drag her to the bookstore to pick out extra workbooks and challenge her to study sessions. Chloe, who had a competitive streak of her own, was annoyed at first. But after a few rounds, she got hooked on the satisfaction of solving a tough problem. Just like that, we went from being first and second in our class to being first and second in the entire grade. Our friendly competition had a ripple effect, and soon everyone around us was studying harder. With everyone focused on academics, the school's overall performance shot up, and we became something of a local legend. This was also the era of after-school lessons. Chloe started learning piano from her mom. Seeing her sitting at that black grand piano, her long, dark hair flowing, wearing a simple white dress. She looked like an angel. My vocabulary was limited back then, but that was the only way I could describe it. She was so talented, and I felt a surge of anxiety. I had to have some skills of my own. I begged my mom to sign me up for art classes. I struggled through learning line control, sketching, and charcoal drawing. No matter how much I practiced or how little natural talent I had, I stuck with it, because I wanted to be the one to capture every version of Chloe on paper. Whenever she practiced piano, I would sit nearby with my sketchbook, documenting her hard work. Every drawing was a record of the time we spent together. Naturally, We both got into the city's top magnet middle school, which fed directly into the best high school if you kept your grades up. I kept pushing our academic rivalry through middle school. The Hunger Games of college admissions was still ahead of us, and the grind was only going to get worse. If we didn't push ourselves now, when would we? I'd deliver these speeches with righteous conviction. Chloe would just tilt her head, her high ponytail swinging, and stare at me with those bright, intelligent eyes. Her look was so knowing it made me squirm. But somehow, my dramatic performance always managed to win her over. I hadn't expected, however, for her unwanted suitors to start blooming so early. My rivals were popping up one by one. First up was Kevin, the kid with the glasses from the next classroom over. I was just about to step into our homeroom, a hot chocolate for Chloe in my hand, when I saw her leaning against the window, reading her new Sherlock Holmes collection. The sun cast a holy glow on her face. It was a perfect picture, except for the nervous, nerdy kid standing awkwardly beside her. Chloe. The second I heard Kevin stutter, I pulled my foot back and ducked under the window to eavesdrop. A few kids walking by gave me knowing smirks. I flashed them an annoyed glare, shooing them away. Inside, Kevin's voice grew even more strained. I peeked over the windowsill. Chloe had closed her book and stood up to face him, a gesture of polite respect. From my angle, her height, already well above average for a girl our age, completely dwarfed him, making him look like a scared little bird. It was no wonder he was tongue-tied. Chloe had hit a growth spurt in middle school and was already pushing 5'9". No one knew that I'd been chugging milk 3 times a day and exercising relentlessly just to keep up with her, determined to be a guy she could lean on, not a guy she had to look down on. Thank God for the Carter family height genes. They were my only hope. Kevin couldn't manage another word. He finally just spun around and ran off. Watching him flee, I happily trotted over to a bewildered Chloe, hot chocolate in hand, and stood shoulder to shoulder with her. What was that all about? I asked innocently. Chloe shot me a sideways glance. You saw the whole thing, didn't you? I just grinned like an idiot, handing her the drink and fixing her with my best puppy dog eyes, hoping to distract her. She took the cup, her face flushing slightly, maybe from the steam. Why are you so happy? She asked. Without thinking, I blurted out, Kevin's small step backward is one giant leap for Leo kind. Chloe nearly choked on her hot chocolate. I quickly patted her back, pulling a handkerchief from my pocket out of habit to dab her chin. She gave me another look. Don't be ridiculous. We need to focus on our studies. I nodded eagerly. Right. You're totally right. Later, using Kevin's retreat as my inspiration, I discreetly started spreading Chloe's new motto around school. A relationship without good grades is like a house built on sand. The first gust of wind, and it's gone. Somehow, I managed to start another wave of academic fervor at our school. And I, the unsung hero, hid my accomplishments and my name in the shadows. Thanks to my cousin Lily, I'd secretly gotten into watching YA dramas on Netflix. Chloe didn't know, of course. I couldn't risk tarnishing my distinguished image in her eyes. The shows were great, except for one thing that always annoyed me. The bad boy always swooped in and stole the girl from her childhood best friend. If you were lucky, you got to be the supportive second lead. If you were unlucky, you weren't even in the running. You were just the guy who offered shoulder to cry on before she ran back to him. Lily would pat my head sympathetically and mutter things like, "It's a law of fiction, Leo." The childhood friend never wins against the fated new guy. And if the new guy also happens to be a long-lost childhood friend, game over. I'd puff up my cheeks in frustration. Around that time, a show like Riverdale was a huge hit. The plot was basically, a good girl from a respectable family who plays the piano beautifully gets drawn to the brooding, dangerous boy from the wrong side of the tracks, and her life goes completely off the rails. I extracted the key elements and couldn't help but apply them to Chloe. It all fit. Chloe was dangerously susceptible to being led astray by some rebellious bad boy or a misunderstood loner. The whole bad boy and the good girl pairing was everywhere, and it made me anxious day and night. It wasn't until my uncle came to visit that I found my salvation. He was my dad's younger brother, a retired Army Ranger who was between jobs. He was a martial arts expert. I used the excuse that a healthy mind needs a healthy body and begged him to teach us some self-defense. The only thing I didn't expect was Chloe's incredible natural talent. She wasn't just a genius in the classroom. She picked up fighting skills with lightning speed. As I lay on the mat, winded, I still managed to give a thumbs up to Chloe, who stood across from me, fists ready, eyes sharp, calmly saying, I yield. I yield. With her skills, it didn't matter if the main character was a school bully or a gang leader. She could take them all out with one punch. Who wanted to be a damsel in distress? My Chloe was going to be a warrior queen. A little pain now was a necessary investment in our future happiness. I told myself as I clutched my aching ribs and got back on my feet. And my foresight proved correct. Chloe and I ended up at the same high school. The number of kids bold enough to confess their feelings multiplied exponentially. For every student focused on getting into a good college, there was another who had already given up and just wanted to cause trouble. Maybe it was because Chloe and I were always ranked first and second, but she was never bothered by the smooth, popular jocks or the quiet, intellectual types. There was, however, one school bully, Ryder Vance. He was loud, obnoxious, and for guys like him, a beautiful, untouchable girl like Chloe was an irresistible challenge. When he transferred to our school, he was seated right behind her. The rumor was that he was always getting into fights and had been expelled from his last school. But his family had money, and they'd pulled some strings to get him in. They'd specifically asked for him to be seated near a top student, hoping some of the good influence would rub off. Chloe was the unlucky academic chosen for the job. Like every bad boy in every story, Ryder looked at the back of Chloe's pretty head, and a smirk crossed his handsome face. He reached out and tugged her ponytail. "Hey, Teach Goody, you're the one the teacher assigned to be my tutor." Unfortunately for him, he didn't know that Chloe's hair was her one weakness. She spent time every morning doing it perfectly. Today, she had it in an intricate braid, and his tug had loosened it. A ruler appeared in her hand, and she smacked it sharply against his. "Hands off!" Ryder, who had probably never been challenged by a girl in his life, shot to his feet. "You bitch," he snarled. "Don't make me teach you a lesson." Our homeroom teacher, Ms. Davis, was still in the room. Ryder's audacity was breathtaking. Ms. Davis put down the paper she was grading and walked over, ready to intervene. Chloe seized the opportunity and raised her hand. "Ms. Davis, with midterms coming up, I'm not confident I can perform my best with this kind of distraction." Ms. Davis frowned. On one hand, she had the new transfer student whose rich parents were major school donors. On the other, she had her consistent top student. The choice was clear. She'd already been pressured into letting him into her class and putting him behind Chloe. She wasn't going to let him bully her star pupil. She made a decision on the spot. Ryder's seat was changed. He was moved behind a quiet, studious boy, hopefully to prevent him from harassing any more of the female students. Ryder kicked the desk in front of him. "Do you know who my father is?" he sneered, hands stuffed in his pockets. "You'll regret this." Then he stormed out of the classroom, slamming the door behind him, leaving the teacher and the rest of us in stunned silence. Does he really think that looked cool? I asked Chloe later as I waited for her after school with an ice cream bar. She told me the whole story. "In his world, we're probably all just peasants," I said with a smile. But inside, I was relieved I'd insisted she learn self-defense. Otherwise, this would have been the perfect meet-cute for a bad boy meets pure-hearted girl story, and Chloe would have been in for a world of trouble. It's the 21st century. Who still pulls the whole "I'll bully you because I like you" routine? Chloe shook her head and took the vanilla ice cream bar I offered. She brushed a stray strand of hair from her face and licked the ice cream. I was mesmerized by the graceful line of her jaw, my heart pounding. I wanted to keep staring, but she looked up and her amber eyes met mine. I blushed and quickly changed the subject, turning into the conniving court advisor, whispering into the emperor's ear. "Chloe, you have to be careful. A guy like that holds a grudge. You embarrassed him. There's no telling what he's plotting." She looked at me, puzzled. "This is a civilized society, Leo. How much trouble can he really cause?" "You never know," I said gravely, "especially since I'm not sure we're living in a normal world." Later, we heard that Ryder's parents had cut off his allowance. He reluctantly came back to school, but he skipped class constantly. Sometimes we'd see him with fresh bruises. Ms. Davis mostly pretended he didn't exist. After all, his family had just made another large donation to the school. But you can't be on guard forever. In our junior year, the school split the honors track. I went into humanities, and she went into sciences, so we were no longer in the same class. To make sure that jerk Ryder didn't try anything, I sacrificed my homework time to bribe a few spies in her class to keep an eye on things and report back to me. I couldn't just stand by while my girl was in danger. Of all the tropes in the books and shows I'd seen, I hated the gangster male lead the most. They were rich, powerful, and utterly without morals. They hurt the female lead without a second thought, and sometimes she was lucky to escape with her life. I didn't know what other fated encounters awaited Chloe. All I could do was push myself to become the best leading man I could be for her. I never even got a chance to play the hero. Chloe became a school legend after she decked Ryder Vance, which brings us back to the scene at the beginning of this story. Now, everyone knew that our top student was as good with her fists as she was with a textbook. Her popularity soared. I was both proud and a little heartbroken, secretly moping in the corner. No one cared that Ryder, humiliated, took a few days off school. Then came the annual track and field day. Chloe signed up for the 800-meter and the 4x 100-meter relay. I only signed up for the 100-meter dash to make sure our events didn't overlap. This year, I'd borrow my dad's DSLR camera to capture Chloe's athletic glory. I easily took first in my race, then grabbed the camera and headed for the field. I found Chloe in a sleek black tracksuit, her ponytail high and tight, warming up with light, graceful movements like a bird about to take flight. My lens focused on her, the shutter clicking nonstop. She must have felt my gaze because she turned and gave me a dazzling smile. For a second, my vision blurred. She was the only thing in focus. I wished I could freeze that moment forever. The race started. The starter pistol fired. Just as the runners surged forward, a hand sneakily reached out toward Chloe's back. But she was already gone, rocketing from the starting line like an arrow from a bow. A girl with short hair, Jenna Marks, watched Chloe's retreating back with a dark expression. I zoomed in on the girl's face, my brow furrowing. So, the male and female leads hadn't even had their big confrontation yet, but the jealous supporting actress had already made her move. If I remember correctly, she was another rich kid whose parents had bought her way into the school. Was she trying to get revenge for her crushed-on bad boy? Jenna was no slouch. You had to be fast to run the 800, but Chloe maintained a steady lead the entire race, giving her no opportunity for sabotage. When Chloe crossed the finish line in first place, I rushed over with a thermos of honey-sweetened tea I'd prepared for her. It was still warm, perfect for replenishing her energy. Our eyes met for a second before she looked away, taking small sips from the thermos before handing it back to me. Next up was the 4x 100-meter relay. As luck would have it, Jenna was running the leg right after Chloe. When Chloe glanced at her, Jenna flashed a wide, fake smile. Chloe just held her gaze for a few seconds before looking away. The moment Chloe's back was turned, Jenna's smile twisted into a malicious sneer. The relay was a sprint, and Chloe, running the first leg, was once again in the lead. She reached the exchange zone first and handed the baton to Jenna. But as she did, Jenna yanked the baton hard, pulling Chloe off balance. She went tumbling toward the rubber track. Thankfully, her reflexes were sharp. She tucked and rolled, managing to avoid scraping up her face. Jenna clicked her tongue in annoyance, then started running, though she was clearly not trying her best, almost deliberately slowing her team down. Chloe, now kneeling on the track, narrowed her eyes as she watched Jenna go. Even with the last two runners giving it their all, their team finished dead last. I didn't care about the race. I pushed through the crowd of students gathering around Chloe and knelt in front of her. I turned and offered her my back. "Chloe, I'll carry you to the nurse's office." She didn't hesitate. She wrapped her arms around my neck and let me lift her onto my back. "Let's go," she said softly. The students around us smiled knowingly, parting to let us through. I had her securely on my back and was about to walk away when Jenna Marks stormed toward us, sleeves rolled up, looking for a fight. "What's your problem, Chloe Miller?" she shrieked. "Did you mess up the handoff on purpose to make our class lose? You have no school spirit." She raised her hand to slap Chloe. I shot out my arm and grabbed her wrist, my voice cold as ice. "Jenna Marks, who's the one with no school spirit? Who's the one who made the team lose? You know exactly what you did. Don't treat the teachers and students like we're blind. Your pathetic little schemes aren't fooling anyone." Jenna tried to wrench her hand free, but I held fast. A flicker of fear finally appeared in her eyes, but she was too spoiled to feel guilty. She started kicking at my shins. "He's grabbing me. Chloe Miller's little puppy is assaulting me." My reputation at this school was a lot better than hers. The second I let go of her wrist, a few other students stepped in to restrain her. Her crazed behavior was scaring everyone. Chloe's homeroom teacher, Ms. Davis, approached with a stern expression. She looked from the restrained Jenna to Chloe on my back, then scanned the crowd. "What exactly is going on here?" she demanded. Unlike the heroines in novels who refuse to explain themselves, I had no problem spilling the beans. I laid out Jenna's entire plan. "Ms. Davis, I need to report Jenna Marks for deliberately tripping Chloe, causing her to fall and get injured. And it wasn't the first time. I have photos and video right here. And when I confronted her, she tried to attack me. Everyone here saw it. I handed her my camera. Ms. Davis scrolled through the pictures. I'd captured everything. Jenna's hand reaching out during the 800-meter, the malicious look on her face, and the deliberate pull during the relay. It was all there, crystal clear. There was no room for denial. Ms. Davis's face grew darker and darker as she looked at the evidence against the other student the principal had forced into her class. Bad grades were one thing, but this kind of character was another problem entirely. The other students started murmuring, their gazes turning accusatory. They called for the teacher to punish her severely. Today, it was Chloe. Who knew who she would target next? My mission accomplished, I told Ms. Davis I was taking Chloe to the nurse's office to get her checked out. Good idea, Leo, she said, holding onto my camera. I'll need to hang on to this for a bit. Go on, get Chloe's scrapes looked at. Don't worry, I will make sure you both get justice. She turned to Jenna. To my office. Now, and call your parents. At the mention of her parents, Jenna's arrogant facade finally crumbled. Her face went white. No, she whispered. Don't call them. I didn't stick around for the rest. I turned and walked toward the nurse's office with Chloe on my back. After a few steps, she tapped my shoulder. You can put me down now. I can walk. She wasn't really hurt, of course. She'd just been playing along with my act. We were childhood sweethearts, after all. One look was all it took for us to know what the other was thinking. She wanted to get down, but I had no intention of letting her. Just a little farther, I whined, playing the cute card. I haven't carried you in forever. It's rare to see you play the damsel in distress. Jerk, she mumbled, her face turning red. But she didn't ask again. Instead, she rested her head on my shoulder. The short walk to the nurse's office felt like it lasted a lifetime. Jenna Marks was gone for a long time after that. The next we heard, she transferred schools again. The rumor was it had something to do with Ryder. Ryder, meanwhile, had been forced back to school by his family. This time, he seemed to have toned it down a bit. But Chloe told me she could still feel a hostile glare on her from time to time. It was definitely Ryder. He hadn't learned his lesson. He'd just learned to hide his malice behind a more presentable mask. Chloe and I stayed on high alert for days, but he didn't make a move. With college applications looming, we had no choice but to push the worry to the back of our minds. Soon enough, it was the week before final exams. My eyelid wouldn't stop twitching. I remembered from my research. In so many stories, the villain tries to ruin the heroine's future by sabotaging her big, life-changing exam, dragging her down into the mud with him. I wasn't about to bet on Ryder having a conscience. I called my uncle and told him everything that had been happening. My uncle figured Ryder wouldn't try anything in broad daylight at school. Petty people prefer to use dirty tricks in the shadows, and they usually hire low-level thugs to do their dirty work. Their methods were predictable: intimidation and violence. He told us to have 911 and our parents' numbers on speed dial. The second we sense trouble, we should call for help. Better to be safe than sorry. His prediction came true the day before our first exam. As Chloe and I left the public library, about a dozen thugs cornered us in an alley. They were carrying bats and pipes. It was clear they didn't want us walking out of there. I slipped my hand into my pocket. Chloe and I exchanged a look. We had an understanding. Protect ourselves and stall for time until help arrived. Facing the menacing group, I stepped in front of Chloe, shielding her from their leering eyes. This alley is right next to the library, I said, my voice shaking slightly. There are probably security cameras everywhere. We're high school students. Attacking us is a serious crime. You better think this through. The leader of the thugs laughed, showing off a row of yellow teeth. You think we're scared of the law? You should have thought twice before you pissed off the wrong person. I'm getting paid to break one of your legs, kid. And as for her, his predatory gaze swept over Chloe. You didn't have to be a genius to know what he meant. So it was Ryder. He was the type to never act without a guaranteed payoff. It seemed like every guy who auditioned for the role of male lead in this world was a psychopath. I forced myself to stay calm. Chloe clutched my jacket, burying her face in my back. It's Ryder, isn't it? I stammered. He sent you to ruin us. Thinking he had two terrified teenagers cornered, the leader didn't bother with denial. So what if it was Mr. Vance? You shouldn't have crossed him. He said he'd pay us a bonus when we're done. And the girl, she's ours to have fun with. Ha ha ha. His cronies joined in, their laughter echoing in the narrow alley as their eyes devoured Chloe. I smiled. That was all I needed. I gave them all a defiant look and flipped them the bird. The cops are on their way to save us, you assholes. The leader, predictably enraged, swung his bat at me. I ducked just in time. Using my shoulder for leverage, Chloe launched a powerful sweeping kick at his legs. His own momentum sent the bat crashing into his head, and he stumbled back. The thugs, shocked that we could both fight, swarmed us all at once. The years of training finally paid off. We worked together, a whirlwind of coordinated strikes and blocks that caught the disorganized mob completely off guard and made some of the others hesitate. Thankfully, the police were fast. Using the location for my 911 call, which I made sure was loud and clear, they found us and arrested the whole gang. Given the severity of the incident, our parents were called. We were still at the station giving our statements when they arrived. The thug leader's confession had been recorded by the 911 dispatcher, and just in case that wasn't enough, Chloe had also secretly recorded the entire exchange on her phone. Our parents fussed over us, checking us from head to toe for injuries before they would finally let us go. Chloe and I just exchanged a weary look. When they heard the whole story, they were horrified that someone could be so vicious. This was about their children's lives and futures. They decided to press charges and see it through to the end. This time, no amount of Ryder's family money could save him. He was 18. He was an adult and had to take responsibility for his actions. And just like that, Ryder Vance, the bully who thought he was above the law, vanished from our world for good. Our final exams went smoothly. Afterward, I asked Chloe what her plans were. She said she and her parents were going on a ski trip to Aspen. I just nodded and took a sip of my soda. "You're not going?" she asked. "It's a family trip for you guys. It would be weird if I came along." It must have been the first time I'd ever been so quiet and agreeable, because she studied my face for a long time before looking away. "Leo, something's up with you," she said, her tone firm and certain. She was right. In the past, I would have shamelessly begged to tag along. I avoided her gaze and quickly came up with an excuse. "We're growing up. We need our own space. Besides, now that school's over, I have my own things I want to do." Chloe seemed taken aback. A strange expression crossed her face, but she didn't press the issue. All she said was a soft, "Oh." And so, she went on the trip with her parents. It was the first time we'd been apart for that long. But it was all worth it, because I was finally going to confess. Everyone who's been following along knows how long I've been waiting for this moment. When we were little, we were too young for love. High school was too critical a time in our lives. How could I drag the person I liked into the drama of a relationship right before college? My plans for her were far more ambitious than that. So I waited until the dust had settled. We were both 18. It was time to give her a proper, official confession. 3 days until Chloe's return. I took a shovel to the flower bed in front of her house. The patch of dirt I had once made bald was now a thriving garden of red roses, tulips, and baby's breath that I had secretly cultivated over the years. They were all flowers meant for a confession. It was time to put my little soldiers to use. 2 days until Chloe's return. I laid out all the drawings I'd made of her over the years. Sketches, charcoal drawings, oil paintings. My leading lady was, and always had been, only her. I looked at the art, at all the different Chloes. Chloe playing the piano, Chloe playing video games, Chloe watching a movie, Chloe stargazing with me, Chloe studying with me. Each picture was a frame in the movie of our story. Looking at them all together, I was struck by the realization of just how many years we'd already spent side by side. I picked out the dozen or so I thought were my best work, took the spare key to her house, and let myself in. One day, until Chloe's return, I called the 2 spies I had diligently bribed and planted by Chloe's side, her parents. My voice was syrupy sweet. "Mr. and Mrs. Miller, are you having fun?" "So much fun, Leo." "Mrs. Miller whispered back, her voice bubbling with conspiratorial glee. "So, is your big confession plan all ready?" "Everything is a go. Just waiting for the leading lady to make her appearance." "Is Chloe having a good time?" "Don't you worry. We told her we're staying a few extra days. So, she's coming home by herself tomorrow. And I can tell she's been a little down on this trip. I think your chances of success are very, very high. I'm counting on it. You just wait for the good news," I said with a laugh. I hung up the phone and let out a long breath, patting my cheeks to psych myself up. Under the moonlight, I pulled a small box from my pocket. It held a custom-made ring. My heart pounded with a nervous rhythm, waiting for tomorrow. When Chloe got home, I hid in my room, nervously peeking out the window. She was dragging her suitcase, looking listless, but her feet stopped instinctively in front of her yard. There, the flowers I had moved were now arranged in the shape of a giant heart. I know it's cheesy, but cheesy works. It's not about originality, it's about results. She bent down and gently touched a rose petal, her brow slowly unfurrowing. Then she abandoned her suitcase and ran toward her front door. "You silly girl, you forgot your luggage," I thought, my heart racing. She opened the door and froze. Inside, I had hung all my drawings and photos of her in chronological order. She stood there for a long moment before reaching out, taking them down one by one from the string I'd hung them on. Each image was a memory I had seen with my own eyes, stored in my heart, and captured on paper. I watched her face, trying to guess what she was feeling, my own emotions mirroring hers as I remembered hanging each one. I quietly closed my own door and waited. I watched her take down the very last picture, a cartoon drawing of me holding a bouquet of flowers, shouting, "Chloe, I like you." Then I spun the wheel of fate. She walked out of her house and straight toward me, her steps firm and confident. I was standing in front of a backdrop of pink, heart-shaped balloons, holding the reins of a large, white horse balloon. I stepped forward, holding out the small box with the ring I'd saved up to buy. I looked her straight in the eye. "Chloe, I brought my white horse to come get you." Wheel at me. Her eyes grew red, and the bright, beautiful gaze I loved so much shimmered with tears. She nodded fiercely. I slipped the ring on her middle finger, and, overwhelmed with joy, I picked her up and spun her around. Chloe, I whispered, I'll work hard to move this ring to its proper place one day. She hugged me back just as tightly. From 8 to 18, I had finally become Chloe Miller's leading man. And I would spend the rest of my life being the only leading man she ever needed. Honey, is everything packed? We need to go see Grandma and Grandpa. Yep, already, Mommy. Let's go. The little boy in the yellow ducky raincoat, a tiny backpack strapped to his shoulders, is our son. Today, Chloe has a rare day off, and we're taking the family to see our parents. Since they still live in the same neighborhood, it's easy. After college, I became a teacher, just like my parents. Chloe, on the other hand, started her own company and became the boss. No other bad boys ever appeared in her life, because she was her own boss now. Time had been kind to her, leaving no trace on her face, only adding a layer of mature beauty that still captured all of my attention. I walked over, scooped up our son with one arm, and held out my other hand to my wife. She placed her hand in mine, our fingers interlacing, and together, our little family walked toward our happy future. In the darkness, a book that was once called The Bad Boy and the Girl Next Door was quietly, forcefully retitled Childhood Sweethearts. Leo's extra chapter 1 have a secret. From the moment I first saw Chloe, a voice whispered in my ear, "You're just a disposable childhood friend." The childhood friend never beats the fated new guy. Your girl will eventually be someone else's heroine. I refused to accept that. So what if I was the childhood friend? I would become Chloe Miller's leading man. Chloe's extra chapter 1 have a secret. The second Leo Carter grabbed my hand and pulled me away from that bully, I fell in love with him. Shh, don't tell him.